Alrighty, everybody, welcome to the Eagles draft special here on the Patterson Report. Your calendars aren't wrong. No, it is not Thursday, but couple reasons. Obviously, the draft will be tomorrow night, and for those of you who follow Ryan on social media, you know that tomorrow is probably the second Super Bowl. I would say one of the busiest nights of the year for anybody in fantasy, scouting, things of that nature. And then I will be on my first night of bachelor party in St. Pete. So it just made sense to knock this one out tonight. This is all Eagles. I'm sure tomorrow, Ryan's going to have opinions on all the picks. So make sure you check him out. I thought his handle came up, but it might not. But it's at Ryan Prost FF on Twitter. For all the analysis on different prospects tomorrow. If you don't follow him yet, tomorrow would be the number one day to do so.
I'm debating about doing a huge thread of live pick grades. I'm really thinking about it. I might do it. So we'll see what happens. But this is all Eagles. If you want my opinions on the other stuff, check out my Twitter. It'll all be there tomorrow, especially for the controversial ones. Ashton Genty's going top 5, by the way. But anyway, onward with the Eagles stuff.
Well, he's talking. I mean, we'll get into the Eagles right now. Are you talking about him going to Jacksonville? Because I've been seeing that's gaining a lot of steam.
A lot of steam. There's a lot of rumors, and there's a lot of Eagles rumors as well with players that are connected to that franchise as well. Walter Nolan, I know that visit recently just leaked that the Eagles had him in the facility. Yep. That pipe dream's done at this point. It feels like
that'd be a little ambitious.
It feels a little ambitious, and then earlier in the day I was hearing top 15, top 11. Daniel Jeremiah left him out of his mock entirely. Daniel Jeremiah is, the guy who's most plugged in. Will Johnson wasn't on there. There's a couple other names. Mike Green. I don't think the Eagles would draft Mike Green with his off-the-field stuff, but a lot of off-the-field stuff coming in heavy here for draft prospects. But like I said, all Eagles. I want to ask you real quick.
Mm-hmm.
What are the odds you think they make a trade tomorrow night? They're going to do it at some point over the weekend. It's Howie Roseman. I don't know if you saw that he had to take laps around the field to not trade up.
Yeah. I saw I don't know if it was an interview with Howie or if it was an insider who spoke with him. But it was basically saying that, in Howie's pre-draft process, he doesn't have, in his opinion, 32 first-round grades in this class.
Never did.
Which lends me to believe, and the way that Howie's always operated is if one of those, I'm making up a number. Let's say Howie sees 20 guys who he believes have first-round grades. If one of those 20 doesn't fall to 32, I don't think he hesitates to drop out and acquire more assets. It's just the way Howie operates. He doesn't reach anymore ever since he famously reached for the player who shall not be named.
I liked him as a prospect too. That's one of my biggest misses. I'll be honest.
I remember everybody was in on. I was not. But ever since then, Howie's been very disciplined in letting the draft come to him. So I do personally think that he trades out of the 32 spot. I don't think we make a pick in the first round this year.
I totally agree with you. I mean, Shador's draft stock is falling. The over-under today moved 13 picks, I believe, to 21.5. If the Steelers don't take him, maybe a team like the Giants or the Browns want to get that 5th year of control, and the Eagles will pick up another pick, moving down to only 1 or 2 slots there. Or, a surprise team can jump up like the Saints from round 2 or, the Jets who need a guy besides Justin Fields. They could all come up, and Howie wouldn't hesitate. No. I think usually in a class in a good class, there's about 18 to about 20 on the very high side for first round grades. I think there's like 13 or 15 this year. It's lower than usual, but I think tomorrow night go anyway because they're looking at the visits, looking at everything that's there for you. How he kind of puts this out there. There's a couple of names that just stand out that if they start to fall a little bit, Howie's going to go up and get them. If Walter Nolan starts to fall because of character concerns, they might go up and get him. Like I said, I thought it was out of the question today, earlier in the day.
Mm-hmm.
but now it's hovering in between. He's either going to be a top 15 guy or he's going to the second round. It's what it feels like.
So here's my question while you're on that line of thinking, because another name we've heard a ton, and it fits. Not that the Eagles draft for need, because they don't, but this guy is supremely talented and fits a need. Is a guy like Malachi Stark somebody that Howie goes up to get?
I believe he would. He's not a traditional fit in a sense, although he's from Georgia, so I guess kind of gets a pass.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that elite RAS score, relative athletic score, that Howie usually looks for in these picks. Kind of like a guy like Walter Nolan has, different positions, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
The visit that really interested me, which we could bounce off the Malachi Starks conversation, was Kevin Winston. I think he's supremely talented. He got injured towards ACL. I think he'd be a nice fit with Vic Fangio. So you don't necessarily have to trade up for Malachi Starks. I'd love that. He's an absolute incredible ball player. It's just how are you going to manage this draft? The price for trading up seems like it's a lot cheaper than a couple of years. I don't know if you saw that tweet from Schefter this morning where the Bears are looking to move up and like 6 teams in the top 10 are looking to move down. So everyone's trying to amass picks. There's some very obvious trade up spots this year for Howie to go up and get a guy that he wants. The Vikings, they depleted their war chest last year with JJ McCarthy and Dallas Turner. You have the Texans who might go back, offensive line. There's a couple of spots in these high 20s that if Malachi Stark starts to fall, I say Howie makes the call and goes and gets it done.
Now, ESPN has a move I don't necessarily agree with. I think if we make this pick in the first round, it's going to be one of two things. I think it's going to be Starks, who I would love to have, and I think you and I are on the same page where if we're able to reach for a top-end D tackle like Nolan, I think he goes up and does that because Howie loves to build through the trenches. ESPN has, on their mock, has us taking Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky. Not that I would hate it, because you can never have too much cornerback depth, and we obviously did lose Slay and I'm blanking.
Yep. We lost Slay. We lost. Oh my gosh! Why is the name?
I can't. Why
is the name not coming to me right now?
Colts gambling came to us.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. He went to the Vikings. I don't know why I'm blanking here. It's one of those
I can't pull it. Anywho, everybody knows who we're talking about, including you and I.
Isaiah Rodgers.
Isaiah Rodgers, yeah.
That's who it was. That was a supreme brain mess up there for my mind's all on the prospects. Free agency happened 3 years ago at this point.
I know. So I see the logic. I don't see us going corner in round 1 with Maxwell Hairston, personally. I want to get your thoughts on that.
I don't see it either. He's kind of more of a round 2 guy, mid round 2. He'd be a perfect player if Howie wanted to trade back and someone wanted to go up and grab a quarterback like a Shedeur Sanders or a falling offensive tackle. But I don't like using that much draft capital on corner. I mean, if Trey Amos is there, I'd probably go for it because he's the perfect fit for Vic Fangio's scheme with the amount of zone defense he plays. He's a primarily heavy zone corner. And I think he just has great instincts, and I'm all in on that. And he was a visit as well. That's why I bring that up. So, that's also going to be on the table. But Maxwell Hairston checks a lot of boxes that Howie Roseman likes to, check off with his draft selections. So it wouldn't surprise me. It's on the table. But at the same time,
if we're talking, I mean, again, this is if people slip, the only corner outside of Amos who I don't necessarily think we're really in play to get in the first. If he slides a little bit, I wouldn't mind the kid out of Texas, Barron.
Yeah, I think he's the one that's not going to slide. I've been hearing Will Johnson's going to slide because his medicals aren't that. I know we had that conversation.
Yeah.
About medicals, and I don't think it was Will Johnson. I'm trying to remember the player.
You and I were talking Ben Morrison.
Ben Morrison, Will Johnson. We were just talking a little bit earlier about Daniel Jeremiah's mock. Will Johnson was absent from round 1, and he was a top 10 lock for what, 95% of the draft cycle?
Yeah, but I mean, he wasn't overly healthy this year, and even when he was, he had flashes of greatness. But we're talking about these other guys. I mean, Ben Morrison's dinged up, but he was locked down when he was healthy. I mean, he missed this last season, which was tough. Like Barron, like all these other guys were consistently great. The top end was there with Will Johnson, but there was also a lot of moments where he was just inconsistent for a first round grade corner, in my personal opinion. He wasn't overly healthy and he wasn't overly consistent. You saw what he could be, but he wasn't that enough, I don't think.
Yeah,
often enough.
You can make the argument that, it kind of wasn't there, that Michigan just fell off because of all the injuries and whatnot. So,
Yeah, you're right. He also had to shoulder a lot of the load.
Yeah, it was not a pretty season for Michigan, even though they still got that Ohio State victory. So I guess it was a success in the end, but
in their eyes, that's all that matters.
It's all that matters, but he wasn't a big part of any of those. He was out for most of the year. So the injury, the tape from, I believe, I'm going to mess up the seasons, his sophomore season was absolutely incredible. Like, yeah, it was CB1 top 5 selection worthy tape good. It was insane. But now with a couple of years pass by, it just shows you how quick the draft process can sour for some of these guys. There's a bunch of guys that probably had round 1 buzz a month ago, even a couple of years back, where they were penciled in, and now they're just not going to go as high as you expect them to. It's going to be a wild night, though. So.
Yeah, I mean, the guy you and I were talking about off air, for most of the season, Ben Morrison was considered the first round lock. And then, the injury history wasn't awesome. He misses his senior year. Now he's looking, almost every mock has him slipping out of the first. Now he's another guy. He's a little bit on the smaller side, but he's another guy who I wouldn't mind if Howie traded back and waited for. But we talked about 2 needs. We talked about the need at corner. Pitch the need at safety. Obviously, in a perfect world, we'd wait for a top end D tackle. Why shouldn't the Eagles address edge in the first round?
Why shouldn't they? That's a tough question. I mean, judging off of it, the visits is the big one where, they only take guys that usually visit. I mean, maybe a visit's going to get leaked. I believe the Quinyon Mitchell visit got leaked day of last year that he visited the Eagles facility. So there still could be time for a big visit, like, a James Pierce or someone to come out.
Maybe Shamar Stewart.
Shamar Stewart, yeah. We have Score in there who plays edge, and we have Ezaraku who plays edge as well. I mean, I don't see the need for it. I have the chart pulled up in front of me. It looks like edge is still a need there, but I think you could address it in round 2 or round 3. I'm gonna butcher his name, but the edge rusher from UCLA, Oladejo, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
He's a perfect, like, Jalix Hunt kind of guy where, he's got that raw athleticism. Of course, he went to a bigger school than Jalix Hunt did. He went to UCLA, but still at the same time, you look for those traits in these edge rushers, and he has all the high-end traits that he could develop. And if you trust the coaching staff, you'd be better off taking an edge rusher late. This edge class is historically deep. It feels like you might want to attack some other position that's not as deep. And judging by it, the needs are very clear with where they spent their pre-draft visits. I know I'm hammering at home that the pre-draft visits mean everything, but they do.
Okay.
Like, that's the board. That feels like the board for the Eagles. Like, DeJean was a visit. Quinyon Mitchell was a visit. Like, you get into it. And there was a lot spent on interior D-line. That was the big one. There's a couple guys in round 2 and offensive line. So, how he built through the trenches. And I think this is going to be another case of that.
Okay. So, we talked a lot about round 1 because that's the sexy round and that's the one that everybody cares about. But if you're a fan of the Eagles and you're a fan of Howie Roseman, you know that he paints masterpieces after the first round. So we have about 5 minutes left, and I want to get 2 answers in these next 5 minutes. Number one, do the Eagles, A, draft a tight end? Probably the kid out of Bowling Green would be my guess. B, a lot of people have the Eagles doing a deal to get Michael Mayer with a mid-round pick swap. Or C, do we run it back with Dallas Goedert?
Look, there's been a lot of steam recently for Mason Taylor at 32, and I am not a fan of that. I think he's a perfectly good tight end, but he doesn't meet kind of the thresholds with like yards per route run that I like to see out of, a tight end. And obviously that'd mean trading Goddard, but I think Goddard gets moved this weekend.
Okay.
I think Michael Mayer is the new tight end for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think he's going to be a perfect addition to the squad. We're going to miss Goddard, of course. He's a top tight end. The Colts have a need. And, if they can't get Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, it feels like a pretty big tier break there that then they'd try to entertain trading for Dallas Goedert, who has familiarity with Shane Steichen. So I think if the Raiders lower their ask price for Michael Mayer, he's not bad. Just because he didn't play, he did have some personal issues last season. Just because he didn't play doesn't mean he's not good. Brock Bowers is just that guy.
He's a stud.
He's just that guy.
When they were in college together, I mean, I know I'm going back a little bit in college, and it doesn't so much matter because, what you do in the pros means everything. But there was a time where there was a very heated and legitimate debate between top tight end in college football, and it was Mayer Bowers 1A, 1B. Like, at one point, these guys were considered in the same class. Obviously, in the pros, Bowers has separated himself from almost everybody else in the tight end room. But that's not to say Michael Mayer can't play the position. He played it at an extremely high level at one point.
Yeah, and I think he could do it again, and especially in an environment where he could thrive in Philadelphia. He doesn't have to be leaned on so heavily. He'll be behind the 2 wide receivers. I think he'll be a good fit. And, I saw the Schefter report that the Eagles want to trade for veterans. I don't think they do. I mean, if you count, guys in the rookie contracts as veterans, then yes, but this team wants to get younger. They want to get cheaper. They're paying their top guys. Michael Mayer fits the bill still on his rookie contract. I'd love to see that addition to the squad. So that's the one I'm keeping my eye on. There's not much else. I mean, I don't think there's any other targets, if I'm being completely honest. Something will form though.
That's a very legitimate answer for the tight end portion, and then the big one. If you're an Eagle fan, and we'll wrap it up on this one, every year Howie has struck gold in the non-first round. Obviously, he has some 7th round brilliance with Jordan Mailata. Doesn't have to be a 7th round pick. Who do you think is when the dust settles in this draft class? Who is going to be Howie's magnum opus of this class?
That is
a first rounder.
That is a tough one because you're asking me who's going to get drafted by them and then who's going to be good. That's
who's going to outplay their draft stock, I would say.
I'm looking at 2 names, and the first one is Charles Grant. He's an offensive tackle. I believe it's William and Mary. I always pick the small school guys. Howie likes them as well. We saw that it was William and Mary. Okay, I was right. I think he has a chance, as Lane Johnson's successor. I mean, he's 23. I think he's going to be a day 2 guy. Round 3, round 2, I'd guess. I think Howie's going to invest in the position, and I think Charles Grant could be the guy to take over for Lane Johnson. And my other one would have to be, I'm not even going to go round 2. I'll go later. I'm going to go Jaden Blue, running back out of Texas. I think
interesting.
I think they brought both these guys in for visits, by the way. So I picked from a list. Mm-hmm. It'd be way too hard just to pick random draft prospects, but his tape at the running back position has impressed me, and he's only 21 years old, so that's also a good thing. He won't turn 22 till next season.
Okay.
I think that's a great advantage for drafting a running back, and all the pre-draft interviews have been good about him. I really liked his tape. He's been stuck behind guys for so long, so there's not much wear on the tires. Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah.
I don't think he was behind Bijan. That was before his time, but there's a couple guys in front of him at Texas, and I think he could be a nice back for Saquon, although I still like Will Shipley. Still my guy.
Okay. You could have given me a million guesses. I would have never thought that you were going to hitch your wagon to a running back to be Howie's greatest coup from this draft, but I sincerely hope you're right. I should have been writing these down and I wasn't, but I'm sure that you have a graph somewhere. We'll check back in on these as time progresses to see who outplayed their stock. But yeah, like I said, tomorrow is the big day. The Eagles didn't build a lot through free agency. They're going to do it all through the draft. I will be pretty much MIA for the next 5 days. So keep an eye out.
Both accounts.
Yeah, keep an eye out on the Patterson Report podcast for all of your Eagles news. And then if you're a draft junkie like Ryan and want to catch up on all the moves and what they mean, at Ryan Prost FF on Twitter, we'll have all the most up-to-date info while I am off the grid. But for tonight, for the Eagles draft special, I'm Brandon. That's Ryan. Go Birds. Enjoy the draft.